Welcome to Lawyers Who Learn, where we explore how attorneys' engagement and lifelong learning fuels their growth. Join us to uncover these journeys and gain insights for your legal career.
Anusha, welcome to Lawyers Who Learn. I've been super excited about diving deep into your learning and growth journey. And now there's an exciting new addition to it from when we first started talking about your upcoming book. So thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me, David.
So there's a couple areas where we intersect and cross that that is on my agenda to talk about today, but we can see where the conversation organically goes as well. Well, first of all, you have an unbelievable bio and history, and I'll just looking at your LinkedIn profile, and I'll just go through it easily so you can quickly get through that, and we can go through parts that need to. Love that you started in BigLaw, but from there, you went to Harvard Law School education, executive education, and I think you're working on women's leadership there.
I was, yes.
And you were the head of innovation for Eversheds Sutherland, which was awesome. We had a lot of head of innovations on this podcast, and then you switched to the other side, and where it gets really interesting for me. First, you were at vLex, I'm not as familiar with, but then you went to Skillburst, and you were the chief strategy officer. And you may or may not know, but I recently interviewed Stephen Gluckman on this podcast as well, right after he sold Skillburst, and I would love to hear. I'm sure you were a big part of that journey and the sale of that. And then you went over to vLex, and vLex then was acquired by Clio, and you're still there right now. And there's an amazing journey behind that. So to be part of two really interesting acquisitions and sales, I think there's a lot we can learn from that. And then right now, even more exciting to me is you're about to publish a book. And the book is called Soul Toll, and it's a fiction book, but really it's a leadership book disguised as a fiction book, which I love as well. That's enough talking for me. So before we go into any of this, you do a lot of interviews and you speak a lot. Is there any topic that you wish people would ask you about in your growth journey, besides going over these main points that I do, that you don't get to talk enough about, that really defines who you are? And thought maybe that could be an interesting where to start, and then we can dive into different areas.
Yeah, thank you, David, and thank you for the overview. It's helpful to be reminded what's happened over the past 15 years. I think something I don't talk about a lot, but that I've started to talk about more is our awareness of ourselves and where that comes from. I talked about it openly, really, for the first time at the recent Legal Tech Hub Innovation Conference in New York. And I did in the context of the book of thinking about your job and your experience as a soul toll ratio. Like, how much is this job soul and how much is this job toll? And how can you use that in your life? And where that came from was some awareness that I've experienced through my yoga training that really happened for me 10 years ago. And I didn't really realize the impact that had on me until I wrote this book and until it opened new dialogues for me. And this is where the kind of personal endeavors and professional life have come together. And that's something new to me and talking about in my professional sphere.
So I wrote a book in 2019, and I have another book coming out in January. It's called The Year We Said Yes. And it's about when I moved with my family to Barcelona for 2 years. Each book, unfortunately or fortunately, has been a 5-year journey of writing, rewriting, thinking I'm done. And then you better like your book, because especially in the last 6 months, you're going to reread it. Like, I don't know, maybe I've done it 8 times in the past 3 months. I love that topic of how much is your job how much of the job is soul and how much of the job is toll. Wow. I didn't actually know I love that saying, and it's really going to go far. Take me through the writing journey for you, because like you said, this is when the two of these things combined. What I see here is, and the reason you're writing this book, while you do so much in your job life, there's so much more of you that is not tapped from your professional life. And I don't, that's not even talking to you for more than a minute. That's the first thing I get from that. So I just would love to better understand that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I've had both 100% soul and 100% toll jobs, and then jobs that are somewhere in between. When I worked at, and you mentioned at Harvard Law School, executive education, that was 100% soul job. It was beautiful. It was like this learning country club. But it also, when you don't have toll as part of it, it limits your growth opportunities. So I was learning a lot, but it was very academic for me. And I wanted to put that into practice. That was something important for me.
Can you define toll?
Toll is the pieces that you have to get through in order to have the parts that fuel you in your soul. It's best described through what are the parts that of me that I have to shut off, and those are the toll parts of your job where like we've all heard of soul sucking work, but it just flips it into a framework of what are those parts that are really draining, that are a toll, that are dimming you, and then what are the parts that are energizing you.
Yeah. You just said the key word. When I talk to and I mentor people, and they're trying to figure out what they're good at. My question is, what gives you energy?
Mm.
You could be good at something or what they want to do. You could be good at something, but it's tolling on you, right? It's just life sucking, like you said. And but were you saying before at Harvard, you were saying there was no toll there, but I thought you said that in a negative way.
Yeah, and that's where I don't know that the, like, ultimate goal is 100% soul job because there's growth in discomfort. There's growth in some of these other places, and so I do think it's finding the right ratio that's sustainable and that allows you to bring your full self to work while still providing some testing and some discomfort. And so on the other end of the spectrum, I have had 100% toll job that didn't begin that way, and that's the other thing. Like, you can sign up for a job and have it be a good ratio and have it be great. And then there's a change in circumstance, and all of a sudden it changes out from under you. And when that happens, that's kind of the path to burnout. And so
Yeah.
the 100% toll job isn't the right way either. It's finding that right mix.
I would more specific, like I'll ask questions and just because it helps give context to things. I've interviewed a lot of legal tech entrepreneurs, Ian Nelson being one from Hotshot, about who were in BigLaw and just knew pretty early on in their BigLaw career it wasn't for them. Is that similar to you to actually practicing as attorney? And like, how does that fit? Is there specific things that you realized that were too tolling on you there that kind of helped? You were thinking maybe about the book then, but like when you look back at it, it was helpful for you.
Yeah, and that's why I didn't give you a crisp definition of toll because there are different sources of it. So, for me, by way of example, as a law firm associate, I felt like I had to turn myself off in order to show up for work. And I actually had this juxtaposition of I like was desperately craving to be myself somewhere in my life. And so I signed up for a yoga teacher training program at the same time as I was a law firm associate. So during the week, I was billing hours, and on the weekend, I was full time in this like twinkly yoga studio in Cambridge, Mass. And as part of that, I was forced to meditate. And I say forced because I was like, whoa, this is way too woo. This is not my thing. And the first time I did that, it was 10 minutes, and I was sitting in this room with other people, and I was like sweating, wanting to run out of the room, get out, like jump out of my skin. And I was like, whoa, like, why can't I sit with myself for 10 minutes? That's not good. And so I started looking into that. And really, the reason was because I wasn't connected with myself at all because I had been shutting myself off to show up at work. And that's when I realized, okay, this is not a good path for me. And then over the following 10 plus years, in every organization I've been in, and you mentioned I've been in 7 organizations in the past 10 years, very intentionally, but it's also given me an opportunity to really notice what those different systems and circumstances, how they impact me as a human.
So many people that I've spoke to have talked about yoga or meditation accidentally or intentionally making a really big difference in their career, in their life. It's funny you say that it's hard to shut it off. Like when I take the subway, I actually struggle and fight with myself to not listen to something and to stand there bored for 45 minutes. because maybe the first 15 minutes I'm like, but then you're like, oh, okay, I'm okay. And you start thinking and things like that. And I realized at that moment, that's really the only time I pause in my, except for 6 a.m. where I'm on that couch, like thinking about things. Is that what you like, the pause? When do you, if you get into like how you pause in your day now, are you meditating daily? Are you doing yoga daily? Take us through where you are today.
Yeah, it's still a journey. I would love to say I wake up with a cup of matcha and I meditate and I'm so zen, but no, I wake up with a 4-year-old and get him to school. So no, it's not like a zen morning. I do prioritize getting on my Peloton, going for a walk, doing all of that, but that's more just mental health, not really that pause in the same way that you're talking about. The way that I make sure that I have a consistent practice and don't stray too far is signing up for workshops that are really slow. They're not these like intense vinyasa type workshops. They're really like slow yin holding poses for a long time, just like more of a slow movement meditation workshop that's 90 minutes. But if I do that once a month, I find that I don't stray too far and then try and go for a meditative walk or something for 10 minutes whenever I can and fit things in that way.
And I wouldn't undersell the power of walking, whether on a treadmill or outside. Obviously, outside is preferred if it's warm and you have the time to do that. It's actually, studies and research have shown not only is it like the best exercise over the long term, but it's like the Steve Jobs walk and talk, walk and think. As much as possible, even if I have calls set up, I'll be with my team. I'm like, let's just do a walk and talk now, forget the Zoom and go through that. So I take what you can. And I think that's fantastic, especially when you get stuck. Movement, I don't know if that you feel the same way, helps. And when you're not looking at the four walls around you. If we could, I would love to do 3 things: dive into Skillburst, dive into Fast-Cased and Clio, and then dive into your book in 2 parts. 1, the journey of writing the book. And then 2, the part that the most authors, and I speak to a lot of attorneys who want to write a book, the part that they don't think about, that's probably even harder if you think about it in terms of what you're trying to accomplish, is marketing and promoting and getting the word out there. And I have one of your LinkedIn posts here that I'm going to read in a second, or when we get to it, to go through there. So Skillburst, you were the chief strategy officer. You had made a switch from law firm life to that. Was there something intentional there that happened? I would love to hear that. And then if you could just take us through the journey of what it was like to help that company grow and then sell to Barbri.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I left my law firm job, and this ties back, I actually started my own business as a consultant and was successful within the first year, mostly working with women lawyers, which is actually how I then got the job at Harvard Law School Executive Education. But
Love
it
it.
was incredibly stressful. I was not equipped or prepared to be a 29-year-old consultant, like putting my own shingle up at all. And so when the Harvard opportunity presented itself, I was like, do I keep doing this of what really lights me up? Or like, how can I say no to this opportunity?
Yeah.
And so I did. But then it was 8 years of working for larger organizations and contributing to other people's success in a way that always didn't always come back to me. And so I wanted to try it again, but I had a different risk tolerance. I didn't want to go do it on my own. So thank you, Steve Gluckman, for allowing me to come in and help with what they had built at Skillburst and say, all right, like I think I can do this. I think I can grow a business, but I don't want to start from scratch. So Steve and Catherine, here's my proposal. Let's see if I have the chops, kind of thing. And so I came in, and it happened to be the time that generative AI was hitting the scene. And Steve and Catherine had this model that they had used previously in getting a consortium of firms together to build the content with them that then they were able to sell back, but then also to other firms. And so we used that model like beautifully for Gen AI because we all had to figure it out together. We didn't know all the practical applications. Like we had to work deeply with firms to do that. And they were scrambling, trying to figure out training too. So it was this perfect opportunity to create a consortium of, we had 11 firms come together. And that really rocket fueled our growth because not only was it building a product, it was also building marketing momentum that then got the Skillburst name out there and drove sales to other products and was a really great opportunity for me to both build product and training and the pricing model and like really all across the board that drove sales and then got the attention of Barbri for sale.
I'm going to use your book as a model. Can you tell us in that role what was soul for you and what was toll for you?
Yeah. So the ideation and creativity and building is always soul for me. So getting that consortium of law firms together, launching it into the world and having all of that kind of like chatter and energy and momentum, that is pure soul for me. No one has to pay me. I don't say this. I shouldn't say this publicly. No one has to pay me to do that. I just
No,
like
but that's what they say, right?
yeah.
If you want to be a car mechanic without being paid, that's what you should do for the rest of your life. Yeah, totally.
Exactly, yeah. And then toll for me in that situation is ultimately there are a lot of pieces to figure out in a growing organization. And so adjusting pricing, having those like client conversations where they're pushing back on things they shouldn't be pushing back on. And it's just, can we all just be reasonable adults here? Like those are the things that are really tolling for me you're just at a point where you think that you're in a maturity model, not just for the organization, but like professionally, that you shouldn't have to be having these conversations.
It's interesting because you came from, like you said, very large organizations and at a small company, privately held. It's a different, more relaxed, less professional sort of, which is good and bad to your point, because you can move faster, but sometimes you're like, this is the level, or if I don't put words in your mouth, but certainly that's interesting. And also when you're in a professional organization, usually there's more training and people who've gone through other areas where sometimes it's somebody's first job or second job and this is all they know. Again, that's from my experience, what I've seen as well. I'm trying to remember back to my conversation with Steven, but the acquisition, if I recall, with Barbri happened rather quickly. And it was when people are approaching you and you're not thinking about it, but then there's a good amount of money on the table and it just happened. Where were you involved in those conversations? Like in terms of, you could say soul or toll, or is that something where, and then obviously after the sale, was that like, okay, now it makes sense for me to find the next, wasn't small, but just that, what was that transition like to vLex?
Yeah, my objective in coming into Skillburst was, do I have the chops to grow a business? Because one day I'll want to do it on my own. And with the Barbri discussion and decision, I was like, yeah, this actually validates everything that I've come in
100%.
for. So that sounds great. And it's going to be really hard to keep growing, frankly, especially with generative AI that comes in and you can make learning videos pretty easily
Yeah.
now. So there's that too. So it seemed like the right timing. And then after within Barbri is a great organization, but it's also very traditional. If I go back to what I was saying, what lights me up and building and creating and being nimble, like you just can't do that in an organization like Barbri. It was fun to come in, but I knew that I'd be finding the next thing. And that's why I moved to vLex as an opportunity to do it again.
And what does the title enterprise lead mean?
It means that I have the go-to-market organization in the US rolling up to me, and that includes customer success, which I really enjoy because it's a lot of training of law firms. We have one kind of flagship firm, Stradley Ronan, it's all public, that we were able to build out their innovation training and Gen AI curriculum with Vincent, which is our Gen AI legal workflow product, as the practice area and like sandbox for the lawyers to go in and practice the skills that they were learning more in theory in the Gen AI program. So again, building out something new from scratch with a law firm and setting all of those attorneys up for success and having Vincent be a part of that is like an example of what we build and do on the enterprise team.
Were you friends with Ed Walters before that?
Yeah, when I was at Eversheds Sutherland, I love this like 2018 story. One of the partners was like, "Hey, I need something AI," something like that. And I put it on Twitter and was like, "Hey, Bob Ambrogi, is there something AI?" And then Bob tagged in Ed Walters, and then Ed Walters picked up the phone and called me. So it was like law Twitter, AI, law Twitter of 2018, and then an actual phone call that then led us to working with Fastcase and building out what we call the spoliation scientist, which was a litigation product back in the day. And then ever since then, Ed has always been a mentor to me. Any job change I had, I always called him and he talked me through it. He would always pick up the phone. We always talked through it. And he was someone I called after Skillburst and said, "Hey, Ed, is there an opportunity now?"
He's a very smart guy. Because if you had called me, I'm like, come here, do what you did with Skillburst with Lawline. So I love that. Thank you for sharing that, because too often, like the way if you don't understand sort of the dynamics behind something, you're like, oh, you just went online and did a search for a new job. And I just knew it could, like, it's just, they're too close, they're too connected. And everybody knows that if you're in the industry. And so that's great. And again, he was smart to do that. And I don't know if they designed it for you or if they had an opening or a little bit of both, probably. So I don't have it in front of me, but how many years ago was that?
I joined vLex last year. Yeah. And just, I know that one of the topics for your podcast is networking and like career opportunities for your listeners. And just on the point of applying for jobs, I haven't applied for a job since law school. Everything has been through network, and I haven't gone into a job that has a job description since law school either. I've created it once I get in.
So let's talk about that for a minute, because you speak a lot, and I've seen you speak. I know it's a soul for you because you're really good at it,
Thanks.
and you write and you create. Sometimes though, it's hard to do that and also be good at networking. Is that also, for me, I love this, but when I'm in a cocktail hour room or I'm in a group of people, it's very tolling on me because I struggle figuring that out. Or I just, a lot of the things when it comes to a big group and also managing your network and doing that is very hard for me. I'm just curious where you fall into that, because yeah, I love that you never had to find a job through the traditional way. And I know other lawyers would love to hear a little bit of what you've learned through that.
Yeah, I got great advice when I was a law firm associate. I was at a commercial real estate event in the Boston area, and there's a woman, I wish I remembered her name, who was the CEO of an engineering firm. A woman as a CEO of an engineering firm in Boston. So I was going to listen to anything this woman said. And there was a networking topic, and I asked her, naively, I said, "Is there like a website or an app or something where I can know the latest sports statistics or like what happened in the game yesterday, like across all games? Because I don't have enough time to I'm not into sports and I don't have enough time to research it. I just need like a quick hit talking point when I go into these conversations." And she looked at me and she was like, "Don't do that. What are you talking about? How am I supposed to be a part of these conversations?" And she said, "No, you figure out something that you have in common with people and you do that." And she gave the example that she loves the ballet. And so she goes to the ballet and she invites people in her network. And those are the things that she does. And which blows my mind. Again, like in engineering, that's a lot of men. And she's going to the ballet and she's found some people that and she does do that with her. And that's what creates the real relationships. And so I think it also goes back to the point of soul tool. Who are you and how do you engage with people on that versus trying to put yourself into a different box that isn't going to be as successful? And yeah, if I'm at just a random cocktail reception, that's not necessarily fun for me unless we're engaging on topics that are really interesting, that are substantive, that mean something.
Two questions. One, what is your ballet?
What is my ballet? It's different in different spheres. So I would say yoga is a great ballet. My book right now, I love talking about. And then at the Legal Tech Hub conference, where I really shared myself on stage, which I haven't done before. And people came up and that created a dialogue with them of, "Hey, we don't talk about these things enough. I'd really love to talk with you about like what those toll pieces are for me." Like we talked about being an innovation executive in a law firm and how at the end of the day, you're still in this second class citizen status and you can be totally aware of that and totally okay with it. but it does have a toll on you because you're not fully valued as your full self, being able to contribute and be recognized for everything you have to bring to your role. And so things like that are not my ballet.
But like helping people through that. And I can relate to that because I'm from New York. And one of the first questions people ask me, Jets or Giants? I don't care about either. And so I don't want to be like, if I had to choose, I would say Giants, but it's generally then I'm like, I'm not really into sports. And then like, it's a whole, like, either I disinterest somebody or not. And especially for guys, like sports, to your point, is a really big talking point. And yeah, I wasn't necessarily saying random cocktail hours. I was saying like at legal tech conferences, at the Legal Tech Fund Summit, or at Legal Tech Hub. We actually partnered with them to do 5 different programs throughout the area. Nikki's doing a great job with everything. But just like when you have the 2 hours or the hour afterwards and you're all there, I'm just looking around the room. I'm like, I don't know. It's just like, you can't do this, right? So we're not going to solve that today, but I know a lot of people have challenges with that in that moment. But I think that's a really good one. It's just even sharing something that you're interested in, like your book, in a way that other people will, because other people are looking for things to talk about as well, besides the weather. There was another point that you had brought up. If I can't remember, I'll just move on. But speaking at the conferences, all right, we'll move on when it hits me. Great. So you're at vLex. Then fast forward, like we can just fast forward to, okay, there's this $1 billion announcement. Talk about patting yourself on the shoulder. Like, all right, I come here and look what happens, but take us through like how you learned about that, just a little bit about the journey, because I would love to hear the inside story as much as you can.
Yeah, absolutely. And no, obviously I'm not taking the credit for the,
I'm
the
kidding. No,
number.
a little humor, a little humor.
But I will say that our contributions to Q1 of this year did help with that number. Part of the story there. I came in the November of last year with the goal of preparing for acquisition. And Nina Jack is my boss, and I came in to take over the enterprise team as the insider. We sell into innovation teams and legal tech and IT teams and law firms. And so I've been on the inside of these places. I know how the decisions are made. I know what has to be done for a successful rollout, all of those pieces.
Yep.
And that allowed Nina to focus on maximizing and building out our online sales and kind of focus on small law and bar associations. So she was really focused on building that out and did so successfully, while I was focused on the enterprise kind of AmLaw 200 segment, as well as corporate legal departments. And so what we did immediately was 2024 was a year of go to market and just a lot of learning as you go and not as much discipline. So once you learn as you go, you're like, okay, let's take our wins and build that into the system and the infrastructure and then expand and go from there. So my first goal was I have to get my arms around this. And right now it's not in a way that I can see what's working and what's not, because everyone's moving so quickly. And in 2020, in January, I said, all right, this is the year of focus. And starting with reducing accounts. So every account executive only had 25 accounts that they were allowed to work on, which was a sticking point, because for account executives, you're like, I want to maximize my odds and have as many as I can. And I was like, no, we need to see what's working. And
When you say
so,
25 accounts of not customers, of potential customers, like
yeah.
you take the top 25 of AmLaw 100, they're yours, Jack or Mike, go get them. You take the next 25, you take the next, and got it. Okay.
And then we're going to win or fail really fast and move on. We're not going to just linger around and hope it's not a strategy kind of thing. And so we did that quite successfully. And we also pushed back more on law firms. 2024, it was more kind of the puppy years of like, what can we do for you? And then 2025 was like, all right, look, we need to implement some discipline here.
Yeah.
We can't give unlimited trials of the product. We got to cut it off. And that can be painful because now their attorneys have the tool and they don't want to turn it off. But also there's like a lot of moving pieces for them internally. So it wasn't just like being a hard nose, it was having more proactive conversations and managing expectations in a like partnership so that it works across the board, but doing so on a timeline so that it works for everyone and it works to for our ultimate objective of acquisition as well.
Got it. And again, I could dive into this conversation for this topic for a long time because I love sales and growth, but I do want to get to the book because that is really exciting. I guess so the acquisition, it sounds like what you said, you knew you were coming on for an acquisition. So you knew there was something in the works. When you found out, or maybe you knew, or whenever you found out it was Clio, must take us through that moment, and then we can just enjoy watching how you went through that. And then I would love to dive into the book for the last 15 minutes.
Yeah. So I was thrilled that it was Clio. We had other suitors that I would honestly be very happy with any acquisition. But I also, as I mentioned, I've been in 7 different organizations for the past 10 years and I really want to stay somewhere. Like I don't move because I want to. I move because an opportunity comes up and something's just not working as well as it should have been or something like that. And we had a flashy legal tech company as a suitor. That's like a very deal bro kind of culture that wasn't going to be my cup of tea. Part of the reason I joined vLex is because I knew Ed Walters, I knew Fastcase. And as I got to know vLex, it seemed like these were all very genuine, experienced people and grounded in substance. And that's a place that I like to work. And so we had a flashy legal tech suitor. We had a more traditional content company, and then we had Clio and the business of law, and like also all of these connections of Jack Newton and Ed and Luis in being at the same conferences, building their companies over the past 20 years, like in
Yeah.
parallel, like
Yeah.
it just makes so much sense kind of thing. And I wasn't excited for the other legal tech company for the reason I mentioned. I wasn't excited for the content company because in my mind, that would have been another Barbri type acquisition. We were then in a more traditional organization. And so this was kind of the perfect marriage. And Clio is a company that is so focused on culture and allowing people to bring their full selves to work and setting people up like a high performance culture, but with the support for that. And so that was like, especially as I have this book coming out, it was really exciting for me too. I've already been sharing copies with friends at Clio and
Yeah.
have them writing to me about the book. And that's bringing the book into the world is a personal thing. So to already have that within Clio has been pretty amazing.
I'm dying to know who the legal tech bro company is, but maybe another time you'll share it.
You'll figure it out.
Okay. And yeah, it'd be great. Maybe it's too soon for this Clio conference, but it'd be great for you to speak on the book. Maybe you could sneak yourself in there. I don't know if that's possible.
Yeah, me and Richard Suskind.
Yeah. Look. All right. So let's talk about the book. Two things. First thing I think of when I hear Soul Toll and understand that it's a fiction book, that there's real lessons. The first book I think of, completely different than like the yoga journey and like the cover, is the E-Myth. Did you read the E-Myth?
I have not.
Okay. So the E-Myth is also a fiction book have you heard of it before?
Never.
Oh, wow. It's a fast, easy read. It's essentially the story of working on your business instead of working in your business. And it's a story about Sarah, who's a baker, who wants to start a bakery. And then once she starts the bakery, because she loves to bake, and then the last thing she does ever is bake, because there's so much that goes around running a bakery, and it's going through her journey. So take us through, first, when did you first put pen to paper? How long ago was that? And then take us through the journey of what was it like to write this book and how you went about it.
Yeah. So it's funny hearing your timeline of 5 years. Mine is the same. I started in 2020. I forced the first draft out of me. It was so painful. I had to just make myself go to my desk and write. And in doing so, I don't know if I was procrastinating or what, but I ultimately developed tools for myself to force creative writing, which was I created a PowerPoint deck so I could visually see the scenes that I wanted to write and a
Amazing.
Spotify playlist so I could hear it too. So I was trying to put myself into the scenes in the world to then write them through me. And I found that as a more inspiring way than just pulling it out of me.
In
So that's
2020,
where I
did you know it was
started.
going to be a fiction book, or did you think a nonfiction? Okay, you knew. And
I did.
why fiction?
Yeah, so thank you for the question. Two reasons. One is that I am an ambitious person and I'm constantly trying to learn. And I, even back when I was a law firm associate, I would be in commercial real estate loan documents all day and then at night be reading nonfiction leadership books. And it was just like there was no creativity or magic in my life at all, day or night. It's just like, where is the stuff that is inspiring and fun to read and pulls me through while also offering lessons. So I turned to self-help books, but those weren't for career professionals. Those were more for individual people. And so that wasn't a fit. And so it felt like there was this gap in genre for professionals who wanted to get ahead and learn some tips and tricks, but wanted to do so in an entertaining way, like the spoonful of sugar that helps the medicine go down kind of thing. So that was reason one, is that it felt like there was a gap in genre and something I was craving. And then reason number two was that when I was working at Harvard Law School, executive education, they taught through story. They teach through the case study method. And it's amazing. It was wonderful to watch these managing partners and lawyers from around the world come in and read a story that is called a case study. So it sounds official, and then engage with these topics in a totally new way because having the story gives some distance to the topics for them, but also grounds it in context that allows them to put themselves in the shoes of the protagonist or whichever character they're in, trying to problem solve through this case study and learn something. And so it just seemed like a wonderful vehicle for adult learning as well.
Love everything about. I'm literally inspired by what you're like. I'm getting chill. I'm just like I love everything you're saying. It's awesome. How much of this book mirrors your life or in characters in your life? Yoga is obviously the component of it, and I know that's important to you. But I was curious as you go through it, how far the field you went from like things that actually have nothing to do with some resemblance of your journey.
Yeah, I would say that the secret about fiction is that it's nonfiction.
Right.
So there's definitely elements of that. There are some things that are literally things I experience, and then others that are, but in a fantastic way. And then others that I had a friend call me like almost in tears. I didn't know your parents died. And I was like, no, my parents didn't die. That's part of the book. That never happened. But also, like sometimes you have to distance yourself from your family to
By the
find
way,
yourself.
spoiler alert if
Yeah.
you're
Spoiler alert. It happens early on,
okay.
so it's not too much of a spoiler. But you do have to distance yourself from your family sometimes to come out on your own. So that's where that didn't happen in that way, but it happens in a way. So
I,
yeah.
so I'm less creative than you, but I do want to get there. My first book, The Fast Forward Mindset, was a mindset book, but half of it had to do with all the learnings and mistakes and challenges in the first 5 years of growing Lawline. And my second book, The Year We Said Yes, the subtitle is A Family's Journey from Brooklyn to Barcelona. It's a memoir. So I could have, so it's still like I'm still drawing from life. I just haven't made that the next step of doing it. There's always lessons in there, of course. I have to find those lessons to share. But for those who haven't tried or thought about it, there is such a delta and gap between nonfiction writing and fiction writing. It is so hard to do, but also so rewarding when you get there, I'm sure. So you're doing it, you're writing it, you're stopping for a year, then you're going back to it. Now you have the book. Are you using a publisher? Are you using self-publisher? And then we only have 10 minutes left. So I got so many questions. So I'm going to just dump them on you. So take us through, okay, the book is done. How are you now getting it out there? Who are you using? And then I'm going to read this LinkedIn post that you wrote.
Okay. Yeah, so I do want to emphasize it is a learning curve to go from nonfiction to fiction, as you reference. I had my first manuscript, and then in 2021, I got a professional editor and she gave me 4 years of homework. And so I threw out the first manuscript. I had to do things fundamental, go back and think about the tense and the point of view that are like 101 level things. And then I took like courses online. I read every single book. So when I stopped writing, it was because I had to learn for a minute before I started writing again. And then for anyone else who's doing this, the best thing I did was got a book coach. And because then I was scared to write because I didn't want to end up with a second manuscript that I would then have to scratch and start on a third. I was like, I don't have it in me. So I worked with a book coach, and I would send in what I had worked on, and then I get confidence in it, and then I could move on so that I knew I would end up with a second manuscript I could work with. So in terms of, yes, now I have the book, worked with a graphic designer for the book cover, which was wonderful experience. Like, packaging the book is its own project and experience as well. And now it's coming out into the world and it's starting conversations and it's figuring it
Is
out
it
as I go.
self-published?
It's self-published. Yeah.
Yeah.
And my book coach talked me through this a lot. I was anchored on a traditional publisher simply because of my ego. I was just like, I want the credibility and stamp of approval of this publisher,
Yeah.
because it wasn't about a book tour, because those aren't actually that important anymore to do in the traditional sense where you show up to Barnes and Noble or anything like that. And so I had to move off of that. I did draft a query letter, which is a massive project. And I did begin outreach to,
A query letter to get it published?
yes, it's like its own little business.
So you sent it out and nobody responded?
People, yeah,
It
I got
wasn't enough.
some responses, but they were generic.
And also, like, to go through that process, it might push the book back another year. And
Exactly.
by the time they have their hands on it, it might not be what you wanted it to be in the first place.
Exactly. Yeah. So it was all negative.
And at the end of the day, yes, maybe you'll see it in Barnes and Nobles, but they actually don't really help you sell it. You still need to use your platform to sell it, from what I understand.
Yeah. So again, all ego of just
Totally.
I'm a professional.
They should come to me. I'm great. Why are they not coming to me? No, I get it.
And also just with your peers as you launch it, like that's people want to know, and that's just like this credibility marker. But also, like, how not on brand is that for me to then be beholden to this traditional process? I
Totally.
spent 2 months shooting off these letters into the abyss. And then I just looked at the calendar and I was like, I don't have time for this. So this is a waste of my time to shoot it off into the abyss.
100%.
Or I could be building and just keep going down and building exactly the way I want to do it. So actually, this is now empowering to have the tools to be
It's
able
like
to
it's a
self-publish.
business. It's literally building like a mini business to do this, and people don't realize how much work it goes into. You haven't even put the book out there in terms of the book launch. Now, I love that you hired a book coach, because it's not something that most people would think you would need when writing a book. Oh no, I'll just write in whatever. Now, is the book coach also helping you with the pre-launch stuff, or is that did you hire somebody else to help you with
Hired
that?
somebody else. Yeah, so I've hired just so people know like what goes into this when you do it yourself. I hired my first professional editor in 2021. I then came back to her after I had the second manuscript because I needed that stamp of approval that I had done my homework, and she basically gave me an A plus. So that was very happy for me. Hired her twice, hired the book coach, who I worked with, hired a social media person, and now I have a PR company helping me with the launch. And then I also hired the graphic designer who helped me not only with the book cover, but you have to format the inside of the book and you have to get all of
Typesetting.
those files
It's
in the
called
right.
typesetting.
Yes, exactly. And it's on Ingram Spark, which is a platform that you put the book on so that bookstores and libraries can order it versus Amazon. There are so many components.
My plan is to put it on Ingram Spark and KDP.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. The people who don't know what we're talking about, don't worry about it, but you will if you want to write a book. Okay, so here's your post on LinkedIn. To give you a sense of the book, one literary agent describes Soul Toll as equal parts adventure and introspection, fantasy, deeply grounded in wisdom. Love that. It's my calling card and platform for community and transformation. Here's what's happening right now. 52 active early readers. Thank you for reading. Gathering feedback from the legal tech community to inform our work. Mailing pre-release paperbacks to transform leaders. Potential collaboration with Jade Yoga. And then I saw there's a link, which I went on, but it was too late, to a website where I could be I can agree to do a review and read it. And like, I remember so that's a lot. Like, you haven't even gone through that. Is this who helped you with all this? or is this, you're figuring this out by doing this on your own, like getting the 70 people or 65 people to pre-read and then write reviews? Let's start with that.
Yeah, this was a gap because the book coach got me so far. And then I just met with a lot of people to get their ideas. And then I had to figure out what I could do in the parameters of I have a busy full-time job. I'm a mom. There are these other things. So what is it that I can do that will maximize my time and return? And so some of the things I just got lucky too, like the link you're talking about is for what's called ARC readers. So you get your advanced reader team and they're the ones who give you feedback on it. And I did change things like and I'm so lucky I had lawyers who would catch, I had one typo and they caught the typo. So that was wonderful. And then like nitpicky things, like I use the word smirk because you get these crutch words that you use and
Yeah.
then you don't notice anymore. And so I went back and I changed because I was like, oh, that's not actually what I intended to use the word that has like a kind of sinister negative connotation. And so things like that these advanced readers help me button up, that I got them literally by posting on LinkedIn and just starting to share. So some things I got lucky and fell into, but that I'm so glad that I waited to launch until October because there was one PR company I was working with earlier this summer and they said, why the wait? Like you have it done. I said, I just want to get this confidence level in
Yeah.
it. And I'm so glad I did because it just feels so buttoned up now.
And I'm glad to hear that too, because my book is done, but we're just, when we're recording this, today is October 1st, I think. I'm not launching until the mid-January because I'm going to try to go through all that process and getting my book cover design on Friday and going through that. And what people are hearing when you do this, there's a lot of money coming out of your pocket to all these different places. And it's not going to come for 99% of books that are sold, the average amount that is sold is like 250. And that's usually to friends and family. I know yours is going to be much more than that, but like the actual making money from a book is not why people necessarily do it. But obviously some people are consultants and it leads to speaking and other things like that. Let's end where we began, or somewhere where we began. You were speaking at the Legal Tech Hub about this book. Now, how did that come out of thin air? Or were you literally pitching yourself to speak there? Because things like that are the hard things that, the book tour doesn't happen, but you putting yourself out there, was that a magic thing that happened? Good timing? And we can end on that as the final story. And then I would love to continue talking with you further as the book launches, and either just me and you or another podcast.
That sounds great. And so Nikki Shaver has a secret fiction book of her own that she has not released. And when I started putting this out on social media, I had a lot of people in legal reach out and say, I have a book in me too, or I wrote a book or whatever. And so I actually started a monthly meeting called Legal Paths Literary Minds. And we got together and shared about our books and our goals and where we were. And as part of that, Nikki was aware of Soul Toll. And then I just texted her like a month before the conference and said, hey, if it would help break up the day from just strict substantive Gen AI content, I'd be happy to talk 10 minutes, just something to break it up. And she responded in less than a minute and said, yes, let's do it. I said, great, let's do it.
And so many lessons in that last minute. Not only did you put out the fact that you're writing the book way before it was ready, and you got feedback, then you did a networking thing and a learning thing where you created a group of other people who are doing that. And then the hardest thing is you asked in a nice way to put yourself out there to speak, because that's the only way this is going to happen. Unfortunately, when you hear stories when it seems, when you look at Clio, like they do nothing wrong and everything just comes to them. Obviously, there's a whole mountain of things behind it. And this is a great example of it. I am 100% buying this and reading this. You're onto something. The E-Myth is if you talk to any entrepreneur, is their number one book because of the story behind it versus just reading, here's the 5 things. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on today. We've only talked for an hour in our whole lives, and I feel like I know you really well from everything that you shared. So thank you so much. And yeah, Anusha, I'll speak to you hopefully soon.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Thanks everyone for tuned in to this long. Take care.